In this video, we're going to take a look at some possible issues with the trail data from government sources. So specifically, we're going to take a look at COTREX, otherwise known as the Colorado Trail Explorer from Colorado Parks and Wildlife, which is part of the Colorado state government. We're also going to take a look at data from the US Forest Service and the US Geological Survey. That is USGS. Specifically, we're going to take a look at the Rainbow Lakes Trailhead area. This is in the Roosevelt National Forest, the Boulder Ranger District. What you see on the screen here are the default OpenStreetMap tiles. And I'm going to just zoom out here and pan to the east so you can kind of get an idea of where, the general idea where we are. This is off of Colorado State Highway 72. If one would travel north, they'd arrive at the little town of Ward. And if one would travel south, they would end up in Nederland. So back to the actual trailhead here on the OpenStreetMap map. So you can see that OpenStreetMap depicts a number of trails here. But if I turn on the COTREX trails, and this is publicly available data that I downloaded, it appears on this map in dark green with a black casing. You can see that there's a discrepancy here, and that this little segment here of the Rainbow Lakes Trail is missing from COTREX. Now, how do we know that OpenStreetMap is correct and COTREX is wrong? Well, just this past Saturday, and for reference, it is October 10th, 2023. This past Saturday, I ran these trails, and these are my GPS traces in this hot pink color. I did not. I observed this trail here exists, but I did not run on it, as we'll see that it is restricted to people camping in the campground. Well, you might be saying, well, maybe you traveled on these supposed trails, but what about everyone else? Let's take a look at the Strava heat map here in this blue color. You can see that indeed on this segment missing from COTREX, we have a large number of Strava users using that over the last year that Strava covers. And we see very few people taking this trail here from the end of the campground, the western end of the campground that COTREX does depict. Let's look at the USGS 3D elevation data. And indeed, let's zoom in here, we see that the trail is well enough defined that it does even show up in the elevation data. Now, while I was running on these trails, I did pause long enough to take some geotagged photos. And let's take a look at this one right here. So this is the location that the trail, as depicted by COTREX, would come in from the western end of the campground here. And this photo, you can see the little arrow indicates the direction I was facing when I took the photo. Here is that photo. Rehabilitation area, please stay on trail. So in other words, COTREX is actually encouraging people to travel on an area that the Forest Service is discouraging people from traveling on. Not good. I also took some pictures at this junction. Let's take a look at this one. Again, the arrow indicates the general direction I was facing, and here is that photo. So you can see that this is a junction between a number of different trails, and we have official trail signs here. Here's one of those signs close up, indicating that this is a junction between a trail that goes to Rainbow Lakes and one that goes to the Arapaho Glacier. Now, I mentioned that I did not travel on this trail right here that goes to the campground. And here is why. They have a sign here that says campground with an arrow straight up, meaning ahead. Campers only, please. So since I wasn't camped there, I did not travel on that trail. Now, COTREX depicts this Arapaho Glacier Trail as all one feature, and they have no indication there that that is restricted to people camping at the campground. So once again, we have COTREX encouraging people to travel in an area where the Forest Service is discouraging people. Although in this case, they're only discouraging some people. In other words, if you're camped here, there's no prohibition of any kind to use this trail. So let's take a look at data from the US Forest Service. This is publicly available. I downloaded it last week, and it shows up in red with the black casing. So the Forest Service suffers from some of the same issues that COTREX does, namely that it depicts this little segment of trail on the western edge of the campground that does not exist, and it fails to depict this section of the Rainbow Lakes Trail that does exist. But furthermore, it is missing this connector trail. So how do we know that the connector trail exists? Well, we've taken a look at Strava. Here it is again. We've taken a look at my GPS traces, and there those are again. And I have some additional photos. So here you see a sign at the trailhead indicating that if one travels straight ahead, they'll reach the Rainbow Lakes Trail, number 918, and they'll also reach the Arapaho Glacier Trail, 905, in a quarter mile. Here's a quite substantial and official-looking board at the start of the trailhead, indicating that it is official. It even says Rainbow Lakes Trailhead. And here is an official-looking Carcinite fiberglass blade sign indicating that this is an official trail. So let's take a look at data from the US Geological Survey, or USGS. And the USGS has, for all intents and purposes, the exact same data as the US Forest Service, which is not surprising, as they are simply, to my knowledge anyway, simply hoovering up data, hoovering as in vacuum cleaning. So finally, I want to go back to COTREX here. So how is it that COTREX, who says that they only use official data, came up with this connector trail when it is not in the official data from the Forest Service? And could we have more of that? In other words, please use accurate data as opposed to official data, which is meaningless. So in summary, we have 3 government data sources. They all have the issue where they're missing an actual trail that, based upon recent visits and geotagged photos, is official. And they're including a section of trail that does not exist, which would encourage people to possibly hike through this campground and cut through this restoration area to reach the trail. And further, data from the US Geological Survey and from the Forest Survey omit this connector trail that goes from the actual parking area to the junction with the Arapaho Glacier Trail and the Rainbow Lakes Trail.